Welcome back to Outspoken, where opinions matter, just not yours. Today, we're talking about something you probably never questioned, but absolutely should. Why the hell do we have 12 months in a year?
That's right, man. We've been living in this weird, inconsistent time system where some months have 30 days, others have 31, and one poor month can't even get its act together, bro. February, we're looking at you.
Those folks that have those birthdays that are
The
catchy.
leap year?
Yeah, with the leap year. So don those tin hats and join us as we discuss how time is man-made. Let's get this started. All right, so welcome back. Joe, this is crazy, right?
Oh, man.
We have celebrated 12 months a year.
Yeah.
For as long as we've been alive, right? And we've been alive almost 40 years now. So
36 years, I think.
36 years. Yeah. Somewhere in that breakdown. And really, man, the math doesn't math. 365 days in a year divided by 13 gives you 28.07 days. 28 days is a cleaner, simpler system, right? So if you have 28 days per month, you have 13. No matter what, there's going to be something off somewhere.
Correct.
And I believe the original was that they were going to add one day every so many years for like at the January 1st.
At the end of
the end.
Yeah. And I think, and I might be incorrect, but I believe that there's also a belief that it wasn't in the order that we see it today, where January is the beginning of the year. I think March was supposed to be the beginning of the year. I have no idea. I mean, everyone's calendar is off. The math is like the Mayas and the Aztec. They had an 18-month calendar. They're off too. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but they said that they had the most accurate calendar were those, you know, with the winter solstice and the summer one, everything was a jive. So I guess that I would assume that the months were shorter and everything kind of coincided with lunar cycles and things like that.
There's this whole thing about what the heck would you call the extra month, right? Well, it's called Sol, S-O-L, like the sun.
Right.
And it would be between June and July. So actually right now, when this is releasing, we're in between June and July. So technically we should be going into the month of Sol. So that's why we're doing this episode right now.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Look at you, always a brainiac. Instead of having a perfect calendar, we get a chaotic calendar that ranges from 28 to 31 days. It's like some drunk Roman emperor was like, July gets 31 because it's named after me. You know what I mean? Like he wanted the most days because he wanted to celebrate a little bit longer, right? Well, spoiler alert, guys. That's literally what happened. The calendar we use today was invented by the Romans. It was tweaked by Julius Caesar, then further fixed by the church in the 1500s. It's called a Gregorian calendar. Am I correct in saying that, Jay?
That's correct.
And is basically a historical patch job. That's all it is. You know, we're like, let's fix it. It doesn't coincide with a lot of things. We're missing some good activities. It's supposed to be warm and it's cold. Let's fix this, right? So a lot of people got in there. They fixed it, did a little patchwork, and here we are with a 12-month calendar that is every February I'm lost. It throws me off for the rest of the month, you know? And it's there was this thing that people did with their knuckles, like it would give them like the days and stuff.
Remember? How many days there are in the month? Yeah,
no
I can never figure it out.
Because it's bad enough. I try to remember.
I don't have a 28-day knuckle in here anywhere.
Well, yeah. I think mine dropped F too, so I'm not really sure. So what's the real reason it's 12? So here's where it gets juicy, right? The number 12 wasn't chosen because it made sense mathematically, because that would be too smart to do, too rich. It was chosen because it was symbolic and religious. We have the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 zodiac signs, the 12 Olympian gods. Heck, we have the 12 disciples, right?
Right.
It was like the holy VIP number of the ancient world. Now, if we look at it from that aspect, then you start thinking, wait a minute, 13 isn't good. That's an evil number, right? I'm sure you've been in hotel. You're a traveler. You're a world traveler. You've seen hotels where there's no 13th floor.
No,
it goes from 12th to 14th, right?
Especially old hotels. Newer hotels, they've started putting them in there, but old hotels, it was 12 to 14.
Yeah.
So technically, if you were staying on floor 14, you're on floor 13.
Yeah, like the number mattered, right?
We won't split hairs.
Yeah, like all of a sudden the devil said, wait a minute, that's mathematically incorrect. I'm just going to go ahead and skip that floor, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, probably the same logic behind banning books today. Too many afraid of the new ideas, right? So 13 to them was like, it's too much. So yeah, the calendar was never designed for logic because that would make too much sense, right? It was designed for, let's be honest, power, tradition, ego. because could you imagine you're as a Roman, you're creating a calendar. Think about that ego about that, about being Julius. You say I created that, and
Right.
it's used. One thing they never failed to do was using Jesus Christ as the point zero right there, as the center
Right.
point. So, but yeah, that's I think why we have a 12-month calendar, and it wasn't an accident. It was created that way. So that's kind of weird. But we have weirder traditions, so I don't think we're too off on that. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of history based around religion, astrological signs, all those kind of things. Greek
Yeah.
gods, you mentioned that. All of those things had a big impact on how we believed and how things were roped into modern day society now. And the thing is that at one time you had a bunch of different beliefs, and you had these people at the top, the kings or queens or dictators of whatever caliber they were. And their biggest thing was
Go Queen.
Go Queen. It was to wrangle all these different people and all these different tribes into one belief system.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, they had to take this group of people and this group of people and this group of people and figure out stuff that could be kind of a common denominator and bring it together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, like a year ago, about Christmas and some of the other holidays and things like that, and how a lot of the things got wrapped into multiple deals. Because you take
convenience, and I'm assuming you're
Right.
talking about like paganism and Christianity. They're like,
Yeah,
hey, let's
absolutely.
have a happy medium, guys. And I
Right.
get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and you think about today, modern era, you have Halloween in United States is celebrated on what day? October 31st.
Yep.
In most of the South American or even any of the Latin countries, right? But South America and everything, when is Halloween celebrated? It's on the 1st and 2nd of November, right?
Yeah. Those
Pretty
muertos.
close as far as time frame and
Yeah.
everything, but the belief systems are a little bit different on why and how it's celebrated. In the United States, just like everything, like Valentine's Day and everything else, I've always called it Hallmark holidays.
Oh,
Because it's basically just to sell greeting cards and candy and
gifts
whatever
and
else
everything else.
whatever else
Yeah.
you can sling at people, get
I
a
love-
buck from them.
I love
Where-
chocolates. I love
Yeah,
chocolates.
I do too. So if Valentine's Day comes around, guys, we're
I got
not
you,
too
boo.
shy to take some.
I got you, boo.
chocolates. I'm trying to stay away from them. So
Yeah. Whatever.
So with Mexico and South America, the celebration of the Day of the Dead over those 2 days, how is that celebrated? It's different, right?
Yeah, it's a totally different celebration. It's an honor of your.
Honor of our ancestors, right,
Yeah.
that have passed before us. So
Mhm.
it's the same holiday. It comes from the same thing, right? But there's a bunch of different deals behind it. And it's not unlike, if you think about this, if you go to Egypt, there's pyramids. If you go to Thailand, there's pyramids. If you go to Mexico, there's pyramids. In South America, there's pyramids.
Central America.
Central America, yeah.
Mhm.
So
There's
all
even pyramids in the U.S.
in the U.S. Yeah, there's those big pyramid complexes that are all
Those
smushed
mounds?
down and everything, the mounds. So you think about that. Why did all these different cultures that had no clue about one another? There was no cell phones, no internet at the time, no TikTok, folks. Sorry. And how did they communicate and how did they know? Well, they didn't, right? This was
UFOs?
just UFOs. Yeah.
All of a sudden
got
you
our
forget.
information.
All of a sudden
Yep.
you forget.
There goes the tin hat. So yeah, we have all of these similarities all around the world with so many different things, right? And ideas and everything. And again, when you had these clans that had to be brought together, you had to have a leader that was like, okay, we're going to put this stuff, meld it together and make one unified system. And
Right.
calendars were a really big thing because we know with, the zodiac and everything,
Yeah.
they use the lunar cycles and all that. And lunar cycles were used a lot for navigation, right?
Mhm.
For boating,
Yeah.
ship travel and all that. And then also for crops, because you needed to know what season it was
Correct.
and, how far away you were from it's going to be freezing or it's going to be hot. So all of those things had a huge impact on why the calendar was built the way it was.
And what was one of the major partners back in the Roman Catholic era was the church, right? And so from the church came a lot of these things and a lot of influence. The conquistadors brought a lot of that religion to these countries and to places that they came to, that they conquered. And with them, they brought everything they believed in, whether it was the zodiacs, right? Or whether it was, they always had that Gregorian calendar. They had that calendar that the Romans created. So it passed down, right? Because let's think about it. When you conquer all the Aztecs or Mayas, you have no one to explain to you what their 18-month calendar is or how it works or how it functions. All that's removed. Everybody's culture is wiped out, and we're all start with this basic knowledge of what is today's calendar. And that went everywhere. So, the Romans and the church were hand in hand. So a lot of that stuff, they had a compromise, correct? Right? They're like, hey, look, this is what Romans, they practice this. Okay, you know what? We're going to name it after this star, this god, and blah blah blah, and you'll have your holidays in there. And so a lot of that they had to communicate. I get it. We had a peace and prosperity along it just happened that there was a lot of stuff going on, and the Roman Empire was huge and powerful and strong, and the church was building up to that, so they had to kind of work together. And now we're with this calendar that's kind of jacked up. What did we do? Did anyone ever try to fix it? Well, here's a kicker. People have tried to fix this mess, right? So you ever heard of the International Fixed Calendar? Jay, you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
It's a system with 13 months of 28 days. It's just like that mathematical equation that you so lovely did in the beginning of this podcast. And one extra day at the end of the year, right? Just for fun, just to throw it in there, maybe, extra day in the beach. It was used by, guess who? Eastman Kodak Company for like 60 years, bro. And it worked.
Isn't that crazy?
60 years. Like, wait a minute. Why did Eastman Kodak use that calendar? And they used it for 60 years, and it worked. It actually worked. But guess what? The world said, nah, right? Because now in that time, 60 years, who was running stuff now in the global world? Banks, businesses, religious institutions. They didn't want to start all over. Can you imagine having to change when Jesus was born, even though no one really knows, and we're all doing it December 25th?
Right.
The calendars had 28 days, bro. We'd have still fit it. We'd have still made it. You know what I mean? It would have still been in there. But there was probably other religions or other things that were happening that it just didn't jive. So to them, it was like, I don't want to start over. There's too much change. It just made too much sense, but let's not do it. So imagine that. People rejecting a better system because tradition said no. Shocking. Now, we had a podcast a while back. I want to say maybe 3-4 episodes, maybe more. We talked about traditions, right? But this is one of them that kind of helps, that kind of betters it. We're okay losing these kinds of traditions, just like we're okay with the daylight savings time. Hey, I'm good with losing that. Yeah. I get sick and tired of having to remember when I got to, spring forward or fall back.
Yeah.
I can't get
spring forward, fall back. Yeah.
It gets old, bro.
Folks, for anybody that doesn't know, we are in Arizona time zone, which is its own complete time zone. It's usually considered part of Mountain Time. However, we do not do the whole daylight savings time. There's only 2 states in the country that are like that. That's Hawaii and us. So there you go.
The smart ones, right? The smart ones. So during that time, guys, we don't go to Mountain. We stay at, it's called Arizona GMT time, and it just stays at. Now, the Navajo Nation, which is the biggest one here in the state, they do follow daylight savings time. So
that's correct. Yep. Up in the northeast corner of the state.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because half the year we're at the same time California is. The other half of the year we're at the same time as Mountain Time. So
God, man, remember when I was in Michigan? Man, that time frame was 3 hours. Those times were horrible. Yeah. I remember those times. I'm like, hey, buddy, how you doing? It's good. What time is it over there? 1 a.m.
Yeah, just so you guys know, to bring this content, it was a little bit more challenging back then.
So it really was. It really was. But
it was totally worth it.
So what happens if in today's society, if someone says, you know what, let's do away with daylight savings time. Let's do away with the Gregorian calendar. Switch it. What would happen? Let's dream that. Let's dream for a second. What would happen? Right? So what if we actually used a 13-month calendar? Everything would be cleaner every month, the same number of days, bro. I wouldn't have to worry about nothing. Like, bills due on the same weekend or the weekday each month, bro. Every month, right? Your birthday never shifted around. Never. It was always on a Friday. Like, that would be horrible, though. If your birthday lands on a Monday, it'll always be on a Monday. That'd be horrible, right? But that's like the only negative. But then we'd lose all the chaos that makes holidays a pain. All the corporations wouldn't be able to game the billing cycles, right? They wouldn't be able to. We only got 28 days.
Right.
So, of course, it won't happen, right? Because they're losing money, and they believe it or not, man, they run America. Money talks, right? So let's not forget how hard it was just to convince people that Pluto wasn't a planet. So if you now try to, you know, you think they're ready
I
for,
still think that's messed up.
I agree, right? But so could you imagine? I don't think the world's ready to admit that their calendar is garbage, bro. We've talked about it because we've talked about the Aztec calendar and how precise it was. So we know that this calendar is horrific, right? And every 4 years we got to add a day, and it's like, all right, guys, this is too complicated. So
Right.
people would rather argue about TikTok drama than admit that they've been lied to by Father Time. I'm telling you that right now. But just could you imagine a 13-month calendar? Our birthdays, we'd be able to enjoy that for another month without having to worry about getting older. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know. I was thinking already. I already have a name for it. I would call it Giuseppe month.
Giuseppe month.
It could give between June and July. Keep the J's together. It'll be June, Giuseppe, July. I mean, it's perfect. I think that works out great. I don't know what you think, but I think that's a perfect calendar.
Yeah. So everybody understands it's 28 days in every single month, and you have 13 months instead of the 12. Again, Sol is right between June and July. Every month starts out on a Sunday on the 1st. So every start of the month is a first on a Sunday. There's one extra day that gets thrown in there, just like leap year.
At the end, right? At the end of the year.
Yeah. Right. So basically, what it does is you have two firsts. So there will be a January 1st twice, but one of them wouldn't be called the first; it'd just be called New Year's Day, and then you'd have January 1st the next day.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
So, some people are like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You got that? Well, it doesn't make any sense to screw up the second month of the year either. And if you look at the Aztec calendar, that was 18 months, right?
Yeah.
So then that consisted of 20 days. You had 5 extra days in there. And those days for the Aztecs were considered unlucky days, and they weren't a part of any month. They were just 5 extra days that everybody just kind of stayed in their house and worried about because they thought it was bad luck or what have you.
See that, and they managed to survive for a very long time.
They did until the people that brought the other calendar came in and killed them.
Spain, right? We're looking at you right now.
We're looking at you, Spain.
And you know what, Spain? I just heard you're not with the 5% NATO. Well, we're gonna have some words later. Spain.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, and so now we mentioned a holiday. It's not really a big holiday or anything, but in the United States, it is something that's kind of celebrated, and that is October 31st. So now October ends on the 28th. Where do you put Halloween? Do you put it on the 28th?
How about September? And you can make it with Mexico. Dia de los Muertos.
I think that would be the best. So it'd always be on a Sunday and Monday if you did it the first and second.
That'd be perfect. You get, eat all the chocolate on Sunday and then give thanks on Monday. You know what I mean? I think it's a good thing. It makes sense. But again, billing cycles, what do you call it? So many things are wrapped around applications on computers, on systems, on apps, all around this Gregorian calendar. So having to change all that would be a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Big business would lose money on interest rates, on collecting interest rates and the cycles and things like that. Your billing cycles would be a lot shorter as well. But it's just something that I don't think they want to deal with. No one wants to deal with it. They're like, if it's not broken, why fix it? But it is broken. But people have just gotten used to dealing with, okay, today's, this month is 30, and then we go 31, then we got 28, then we got, it's just, it's so confusing that it just doesn't make sense. You would think in a society where, especially if you're like ADHD or OCD and you have all these weird days in a month, you're like, oh my God, why can't it be like, you guys started this, you could be smart about it, right? So,
another thing that would be a similarity to it that I think is hard to get people to switch their minds on is the metric versus imperial system, right? So we're one of the few places in the world that is running on the imperial system.
Yeah.
And pretty much the rest of the world has went metric. So here in the United States, like your bottles with liquids and stuff like that, it has both things marked on there because we're too dumb to figure out the metric system, right? Yeah. But you have people that come from other countries or the stuff is sold elsewhere and you want to be able for them to understand it. So for it to have the metric system. So I think that's a big thing with it too. I know my mom worked in government years ago and there was a change in our hometown on one of the major streets. And so here's the thing with it. So that street had its own name. It was, I think it was Boulevard is what it was originally. It was something Boulevard. And then after all these years, they say, oh, we want to classy it up and we want to call it Sun Valley Parkway or something like that, right? Every one of those businesses back then, we had Yellow Pages and all that stuff. They had to change all their letterhead. If they had it on a sign, that had to be changed. It cost a ton of money. And then you think about, I know one of them was a exterminator. There was an exterminator company. So they're having to change all their letterhead, business cards, the sign outside, and all of the trucks because they had the address on all of the trucks. So they had to go change all that. And back then you had to get them painted. There wasn't all these cool stickers and stuff like there are now, right? So that cost companies a lot of money to change all that stuff. So that is a lot of the back and forth on these things, whether it's good or not. In my opinion, I think a 13-month calendar makes so much more sense, but so does the metric system. So how do we implement that? Because I mean, the imperial system we're running it's 12, right?
Yeah.
And it's broken down into half inch, quarter inch, 8, 16, 32nd, 64.
And I hear that the imperial system is not as accurate.
It's right because meters, centimeters, they're all divisions of 10. So it's really easy to calculate in your head decimal points and stuff like that, where the imperial system's kind of confusing. So that is our point with this, is that the 13-month calendar is confusing. It doesn't make sense to everything that's going on, right? But again, this has been ingrained in us so much that nobody's going to want to change it.
No,
imagine
if you had to
accepted it.
Imagine you'd have to change every application on things, and like where it asks you for a height or a measurement, you'd have to change that, right? And if we go to kilometers instead of miles, we'd have to change every sign out in the roads, right? And it's just, I just think that it's easier to do something that's more accurate instead of something that's more chaotic. And of course, going to the metric system would be much more accurate. But again, we're used to a certain type of measurement, and so we go with. And but you know what's funny? Important areas use it, like hospitals, medical field uses that system. They don't use the imperial system.
Yeah,
and so when it comes to liquids and stuff like that, they use the correct one. And why do they do that? Because it's key. It's important that you get the proper dosage, right? Not something that's relevantly close, but the proper dosage of something.
Right.
And so,
well, the medical industry also uses Latin, right? And then because medications and things like that, because if you're traveling or whatever, they need to have the same
correct
system that works right for it. I don't want to get off on a tangent or anything, but being a musician, there's something that this is a big tinfoil hat thing for us. Years ago in the 1940s, they changed the music from 432 hertz to 440 hertz. Now, to most people, this doesn't mean anything, right? So our tunings have changed just slightly. They've proved through science that 432 hertz helps with healing and all kinds of other stuff in our bodies. 440 hertz isn't actually really good for us. So all of our music throughout the years has been made to where it's actually kind of not as good for us.
Oh, wow.
And it's a standard worldwide. So this is something that's been changed. So the only reason I bring that up is for all of this to encompass everything is why through history have we changed all of these different things like calendars, right?
Yeah.
Why have we made them the way they are today? Why are we living with them the way we are today, just like the imperial system? And why don't we revert back or change it to something that's more proper? And why is it so difficult? And obviously, just as my example earlier, businesses having to change things and it costing a lot of money to do all this stuff. That's where we run into the hiccups, So I don't know what the answer is to it. I would love to see us go to a 13-month calendar personally, but
I would too. And I think with that, I think I would be allowed another week of vacation because we've had it another month. So that's another month of working. Right. So, I think it's a positive thing for all of us. I think we should all start writing our local congressman or woman and set up some petitions online. The things that liberals like to do. Let's get out there and let's voice let's go out there and have peaceful protests.
Let's go
I
glue
wear
our
a
hands to
size.
the streets.
I wear a size 9. So when we go out there and do peaceful protesting and looting, 9. And then my shirt is a 14 Husky. So let's get that done too. But anyway, the point being is that here in America, because we are America, we are the proud, we are the mighty. We want to do things the hard way because it's different, right? No one else is doing it, and
Right.
we're America, and we set the standards unless it has to do with measurement, time, and everything else.
Right. And everything else. We just want to do it different because we are Americans.
That's it, man. And
that's who we are.
we run the show, buddy. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
what we're doing here.
If you think about it, and I know there's a lot of controversy and everything going on right now with protesting and riots and everything else, and people not being proud of the flag and all that kind of stuff. But if you really think about it, all societies that had any kind of influence throughout time, right?
Yeah.
What did they do? They did stuff different.
Mm-hmm.
They did it different than it used to be done. They did it different than that tribe across the river or that country across the strait. The United States has been known as a country that just ventures out on its own, man. Doesn't care what anybody else thinks about it.
And I think we like individuality. I think it's one of the things that we enjoy. Even now, you have like a huge nation, like let's say the Navajo Nation, but then even them, they're broken down into different tribes, right? Because they have different things that they might do that's not in accordance to the entire that applies to the entire Navajo Nation, right? They all have sub tribes in there. So, northern tribes could run different than the southern tribes and eastern and western tribes.
Yeah.
So that's America. We did all this, right? We were like that. Like even the pilgrims that came here, we changed how we did things in America versus how we did them in Europe, right? In England. We changed those things because we wanted to start new traditions. We wanted to start something different because this is America. We figured, it's a blank check, clean slate. We do what we want. So let us do something different. And I think that's and we have always kept that mentality, and, our ancestors fed that into our heads. And now we're Americans. We do what we want kind of attitude. You know what I mean? Now that sometimes works in our favor and sometimes it doesn't. Right. So, but that's just society, and that's what happens. That's what we do. But, if you look at society, even on this side of the hemisphere with Aztecs and Mayas, you had Aztecs that conquered other Aztec tribes within the Aztec Empire. It's just, survival, bro. Like they had better lands for crops. I'm going to go over there and they're the weaker Aztecs. Let's take them out. You know what I mean? And they made them slaves. And yeah, we had slaves. And guess what else they did? They sacrificed them to the gods, right? Tear their heart out. So these are the things that we did in this continent, right? In the Americas. And it just follows now with this chaotic calendar that we've created with 12 months. And good luck on the days of the month. It could go from 28 to 31. I'm surprised they put a 32 in there somewhere, but that's just the way it is. And that's the way the things are. But now that you were talking earlier, you mentioned about the flag. Now I see why we get in so much trouble as Americans, bro. There are 13 stripes in that flag, bro. That's a bad, unlucky number. We need to go to 12. All right, or just change the stripes altogether. All right, because you either go 12 or we go 14. All right, we'll just say that we had another. There was another little place out there, another colony out there that we forgot about. We'll call it. What was that colony, that the Roke or whatever, the one that came, they disappeared, and then they just found this writing on the tree. Remember? Do you hear about that story?
Yeah.
We'll call them the 14th colony.
The 14th colony.
You know what I mean?
We need to add a 14th stripe on there.
Yeah, bro.
And it's what's funny, man, is that, boy, this is way off subject, but the amount of these like college kids, they'll ask them how many stripes and how many stars on the flag.
Don't even get me started on those.
They don't even know. And it's like, forget knowing what the 13 stripes are for and what the 50 stars are for. It's like, I don't know. How many states do we have? 53? I don't know. Something like that.
I think I think you brought up a good point. I think maybe we're going to go over there, do like Charlie, like Charlie Kirk. We're going to go to ASU and ask these questions.
Just simple stuff.
Hey, how many stripes in the American flag? What do they mean?
What's sad is legal immigrants coming into this country know more about civics than our own kids that were born here do.
Well, you know why? That's a difference between privilege and not privileged. You know what I mean?
100%, man. It's
someone who's coming
privilege.
here, they'll do anything and everything to learn the culture, to be part of the culture, to be proud of the culture. When someone lives, when someone's born here, they're spoiled little brats, and let's be honest, they feel privileged, and they could do whatever they want. And again, what happens with that? You're seeing it today, ladies and gentlemen.
That's
the
right.
Peaceful protests of America.
That's right.
So
yeah.
So if you guys out there, you lefties listening, if you're out there protesting peacefully in California, I'm a size 9 shoes. I wear a 14 Husky shirt. And so, feel free to get me some garb. You know what I mean? When you're out there peacefully protesting.
Yeah.
So, that's it, man.
Getting into those fancy stores out there. And
yeah. We don't have fancy stores in there.
We don't have fancy stores here.
So,
you got to go to Scottsdale for that.
Yeah, Weespole here.
We don't have gas money for that.
No, yeah. They make sure they put Scottsdale far away from us because we can't afford to drive up there.
Yeah. It's 15 gated communities between us and them. So, all right. Well, guys, before we get out of here, make sure and smash that like button, subscribe to Outspoken, share the show with everyone you know, and hit that bell icon to get notified when we upload a new episode. Make sure you take care of one another.
And remember, do better, be better.
And as always,
God bless
America.
We'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
See you next Tuesday.